We'll be reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna this evening, and we have restarted the book. We're on page 86, about halfway down the page. We've just finished the story of the snake who has been taught to hiss but not bite. So, Sri Ramakrishna said, in this creation of God, there's a variety of things: men, animals, trees, plants. Among the animals, some are good, some are bad. There are ferocious animals like the tiger. Some trees bear fruit, sweet as nectar, and others bear fruit that is poisonous. Likewise, among human beings, there are the good and the wicked, the holy and the unholy. There are some who are devoted to God, and others who are attached to the world. Men may be divided into 4 classes: those bound by the fetters of the world, the seekers after liberation, the liberated, and the ever-free. Among the ever-free, we may count sages like Narada. They live in the world for the good of others, to teach men spiritual truth. Those in bondage are sunk in worldliness and forgetful of God. Not even by mistake do they think of God. The seekers after liberation want to free themselves from attachment to the world. Some of them succeed, and others do not. The liberated souls, such as the sadhus and the mahatmas, are not entangled in the world in lust and greed. Their minds are free from worldliness. Besides, they always meditate on the lotus feet of God. Suppose a net has been cast into a lake to catch fish. Some fish are so clever that they are never caught in the net. They are like the ever-free. But most of the fish are entangled in the net. Some of them try to free themselves from it, and they are like those who seek liberation. But not all the fish that struggle succeed. A very few do jump out of the net, making a big splash in the water. Then the fishermen shout, "Look, there goes a big one." But most of the fish caught in the net cannot escape, nor do they make any effort to get out. On the contrary, they burrow into the mud with the net in their mouths and lie there quietly thinking, "We need not fear any more. We are quite safe here." But the poor things do not know that the fishermen will drag them out of the net, out with the net. These are like the men bound to the world. The bound souls are tied to the world by the fetters of lust and greed. They are bound hand and foot. Thinking of lust and greed will make them happy and give them security. They do not realize that it will lead them to annihilation. When a man thus bound to the world is about to die, his wife asks, "You are about to go, but what have you done for me?" Again, such is his attachment to the things of the world that when he sees the lamp burning brightly, he says, "Dim the light, too much oil is being used," and he is on his deathbed. The bound souls never think of God. If they get any leisure, they indulge in idle gossip and foolish talk, or they engage in fruitless work. If you ask one of them the reason, he answers, "Oh, I cannot keep still, so I'm making a hedge." When time hangs heavy on their hands, they perhaps start playing cards. There was a deep silence in the room. A devotee: "Sir, is there no help then for such a worldly person?" Master: "Certainly there is. From time to time he should live in the company of holy men, and from time to time go into solitude to meditate on God. Furthermore, he should practice discrimination and pray to God, 'Give me faith and devotion.' Once a person has faith, he has achieved everything. There is nothing greater than faith." To Kedar: "You must have read about the tremendous power of faith. It is said in the Purana that Rama, who was God himself, the embodiment of absolute Brahman, had to build a bridge to cross the sea to Ceylon. But Hanuman, trusting in Rama's name, cleared the sea in one jump and reached the other side. He had no need of a bridge. All laugh. Once a man was about to cross the sea. Bibhishana wrote Rama's name on a leaf, tied it in a corner of the man's wearing cloth, and said to him, "Don't be afraid. Have faith and walk on the water. But look here. The moment you lose faith, you will be drowned." The man was walking easily on the water. Suddenly, he had an intense desire to see what was tied in his cloth. He opened it and found only a leaf with the name of Rama written on it. "What is this?" he thought. "Just the name of Rama?" As soon as doubt entered his mind, he sank under the water. If a man has faith in God, then even if he has committed the most heinous sins, such as killing a cow, a Brahmin, or a woman, he will certainly be saved through his faith. Let him only say to God, "O Lord, I will not repeat such an action," and he need not be afraid of anything. When he had said this, the master sang, "If only I can pass away repeating Durga's name, how canst thou then, O Blessed One, withhold from me deliverance? Wretched though I may be, I may have stolen a drink of wine, or killed a child unborn, or slain a woman or a cow, or even caused a Brahmin's death. But though it all be true, nothing of this can make me feel the least uneasiness. For through the power of thy sweet name, my wretched soul may still aspire, even to Brahmanhood." Pointing to Narendra, the master said, "You all see this boy? He behaves that way here. A naughty boy seems very gentle when with his father, but he is quite another person when he plays in the chutney. Narendra and people of his type belong to the class of the ever-free. They are never entangled in the world. When they grow a little older, they feel the awakening of inner consciousness and go directly toward God. They come to the world only to teach others. They never care for anything of the world. They are never attached to lust and greed. The Vedas speak of the Homer bird. It lives high up in the sky, and there it lays its egg. As soon as the egg is laid, it begins to fall, but it is so high up that it continues to fall for many days. As it falls, it hatches, and the chick falls. As the chick falls, its eyes open, it grows wings. As soon as its eyes open, it realizes that it is falling and will be dashed to pieces on touching the earth. Then it at once shoots up toward the mother bird high in the sky." At this point, Narendra left the room. Kedar, Prankrishna, M, and many others remained. "Master, you see, Narendra excels in singing, playing on instruments, study, and everything. The other day, he had a discussion with Kedar and tore his arguments to shreds." All laugh. To M, "Is there any book in English on reasoning?" M, "Yes, sir. It is called Logic." Master, "Tell me what it says." M was a little embarrassed. He said, "One part of the book deals with deduction from the general to the particular. For example, all men are mortal. Scholars are men, therefore scholars are mortal. Another part deals with the method of reasoning from the particular to the general. For example, this crow is black. That crow is black. The crows we see everywhere are black. Therefore, all crows are black. But there may be a fallacy in a conclusion arrived at in this way. For on inquiry, one may find a white crow in some country." There is another illustration. If there is rain, there is or has been a cloud, for rain comes from a cloud. Still another example. This man has 32 teeth. That man has 32 teeth. All men we see have 32 teeth. Therefore, men have 32 teeth. English logic deals with such inductions and deductions. Ramakrishna barely heard these words. While listening, he became absent-minded, so the conversation did not proceed far. When the meeting broke up, the devotees sauntered in the temple garden. M went in the direction of the Panchavati. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. After a while, he returned to the master's room. There on the small north veranda, he witnessed an amazing sight. Sri Ramakrishna was standing still, surrounded by a few devotees, and Narendra was singing. M had never heard anyone except the master sing so sweetly. When he looked at Sri Ramakrishna, he was struck with wonder, for the master stood motionless, with eyes transfixed. He seemed not even to breathe. A devotee told M that the master was in samadhi. M had never before seen or heard of such a thing. Silent with wonder, he thought, is it possible for a man to be so oblivious to the outer world in the conscious state of God? How deep his faith and devotion must be to bring about such a state. Narendra was singing, "Meditate, O my mind, on the Lord Hari, the stainless one, pure spirit through and through. How peerless is the light that in him shines. How soul-bewitching is his wondrous form. How dear is he to all his devotees. Even more beauteous in a fresh blossoming love that shames the splendor of a million moons. Like lightning gleams the glory of his form, rising erect the hair for very joy." The master shuddered when this last line was sung. His hair stood on end, and tears of joy streamed down his cheeks. Now and then his lips parted in a smile. Was he seeing the peerless beauty of God that shames the splendor of a million moons? Was this the vision of God, the essence of spirit? How much austerity and discipline, how much faith and devotion must be necessary for such a vision? The song went on. Worship his feet in the lotus of your heart, with mind serene and eyes made radiant with heavenly love. Behold the matchless sight. Again that bewitching smile, the body motionless as before, the eyes half shut, as if beholding a strange inner vision. The song drew to a close. Narendra sang the last lines. Caught in the spell of his love's ecstasy, immerse yourself forevermore, O mind, in him who is pure knowledge and pure bliss. The sight of the samadhi and the divine bliss he had witnessed left an indelible impression on M's mind. He returned home deeply moved. Now and then he could hear within himself the echo of those soul-intoxicating lines. Immerse yourself forevermore, O mind, in him who is pure knowledge and pure bliss. The next day, too, was a holiday for M. He arrived at Dakshineshwar at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Excuse me. Sri Ramakrishna was in his room. Narendra, Bhavanath, and a few other devotees were sitting on a mat spread on the floor. They were all young men of 19 or 20. Seated on the small couch, Sri Ramakrishna was talking with them and smiling. No sooner had M entered the room than the master laughed aloud and said to the boys, "There, he has come again." They all joined in the laughter. M bowed low before him and took a seat. Before this, he had saluted the master with folded hands like one with an English education. But that day, he learnt to fall down at his feet in orthodox Hindu fashion. Later, I just lost my place. Presently, the master explained the cause of his laughter to the devotees. He said, "A man once fed a peacock with a pill of opium at 4:00 in the afternoon. The next day, exactly at that time, the peacock came back. It had felt the intoxication of the drug and returned just in time to have another dose." All laugh. M. thought this a very apt illustration. Even at home, he had been unable to banish the thought of Sri Ramakrishna for a moment. His mind was constantly at Dakshineshwar, and he had counted the minutes until he should go again. In the meantime, the master was having great fun with the boys, treating them as if they were his most intimate friends. Peals of side-splitting laughter filled the room, as if it were a mart of joy. The whole thing was a revelation to him. He thought, "Didn't I see him only yesterday, intoxicated with God? Wasn't he swimming then in the ocean of divine love, a sight I had never seen before? And today, the same person is behaving like an ordinary man. Wasn't it he who scolded me on the first day of my coming here? Didn't he admonish me, saying, 'And you are a man of knowledge'? Wasn't it he who said to me that God with form is as true as God without form? Didn't he tell me that God alone is real and all else is illusory? Wasn't it he who advised me to live in the world unattached, like a maidservant in a rich man's house?" Sri Ramakrishna was having great fun with the young devotees. Now and then he glanced at M. He noticed that M sat in silence. The master said to Ramlal, "You see, he is a little advanced in years, and therefore somewhat serious." Now you have to understand, the boys were between 19 and 20. M was the ripe old age of like 27. He sits quiet while the youngsters are making merry. No, M was then about 28 years old. The conversation drifted to Hanuman, whose picture hung on the wall in the master's room. Sri Ramakrishna, just imagine Hanuman's state of mind. He didn't care for money, honor, creature comforts, or anything else. He longed only for God. When he was running away with the heavenly weapon that had been secreted in the crystal pillar, Mandodari began to tempt him with various fruits so that he might come down and drop the weapon. But he couldn't be tricked so easily. In reply to her persuasions, he sang this song, "Am I in need of fruit? I have the fruit that makes this life fruitful indeed. Within my heart the tree of Rama grows, bearing salvation for its fruit. Under the wish-fulfilling tree of Rama do I sit at ease, plucking whatever fruit I will. But if you speak of fruit, no beggar I for common fruit. Behold, I go, leaving a bitter fruit for you." As Sri Ramakrishna was singing the song, he went into samadhi. Again, the half-closed eyes and motionless body that one sees in his photograph. Just a moment before, the devotees had been making merry in his company. Now all eyes were riveted on him. Thus, for the second time, M saw the master in samadhi. After a long while, the master came back to ordinary consciousness. His face lighted up with a smile, and his body relaxed. His senses began to function in a normal way. He shed tears of joy as he repeated the holy name of Rama. M wondered whether this very saint was the person who a few minutes earlier had been behaving like a child of 5. The master said to Narendra and M, "I should like to hear you speak and argue in English." They both laughed, but they continued to talk in their mother tongue. It was impossible for M to argue any more before the master. Though Sri Ramakrishna insisted they did not speak in English. At 5:00 in the afternoon, all the devotees except Narendra and M took leave of the master. As M was walking in the temple garden, he suddenly came upon the master, talking to Narendra on the bank of the goose pond. Sri Ramakrishna said to Narendra, "Look here, come a little more often. You are a newcomer. On first acquaintance, people visit each other quite often, as is the case with a lover and his sweetheart." Narendra and him laugh. "So please come, won't you?" Narendra, a member of the Brahmo Samaj, was very particular about his promises. He said with a smile, "Yes, sir, I shall try." As they were returning to the master's room, Sri Ramakrishna said to him, "When peasants go to the market to buy bullocks for their plows, they can easily tell the good from the bad by touching their tails. On being touched there, some meekly lie down on the ground. The peasants recognize that these are without mettle, and so reject them. They select only those bullocks that frisk about and show spirit when their tails are touched. Narendra is like a bullock of this latter class. He is full of spirit within." The master smiled as he said this and continued, "There are some people who have no grit whatever. They are like flattened rice soaked in milk, soft and mushy, no inner strength." It was dusk. The master was meditating on God. He said to M, "Go and talk to Narendra, then tell me what you think of him." Evening worship was over in the temples. M met Narendra on the bank of the Ganga, and they began to converse. Narendra told M about his studying in college, his being a member of the Brahmo Samaj, and so on. It was now late in the evening and time for M's departure, but he felt reluctant to go, and instead went in search of Sri Ramakrishna. He had been fascinated by the master's singing and wanted to hear more. At last he found the master pacing alone in the Nat Mandir in front of the Kali temple. A lamp was burning in the temple on either side of the image of the Divine Mother. A single lamp in the spacious Nat Mandir blended light and darkness into a kind of mystic twilight, in which the figure of the master could be dimly seen. M had been enchanted by the master's sweet music. With some hesitation, he asked him whether there would be any more singing that evening. "No, not tonight," said Sri Ramakrishna after a little reflection. Then, as if remembering something, he added, "But I'm going soon to Balaram Bose's house in Calcutta. Come there and you'll hear me sing." M agreed to go. "Master, do you know Balaram Bose?" M, "No, sir, I don't." Master, "He lives in Bhojpara." M, "Well, sir, I shall find him." Sri Ramakrishna walked up and down the hall with him. He said to him, "Let me ask you something. What do you think of me?" M remained silent. Again Sri Ramakrishna said, "What do you think of me? How many annas of knowledge of God have I?" M, "I don't understand what you mean by annas, but of this I am sure. I have never before seen such knowledge, ecstatic love, faith in God, renunciation, and Catholicity anywhere." The master laughed. M bowed low before him and took his leave. He had gone as far as the main gate of the temple garden, when he suddenly remembered something and came back to Sri Ramakrishna, who was still in the Nat Mandir. In the dim light, the master, all alone, was pacing the hall, rejoicing in the self, as the lion lives and roams alone in the forest. In silent wonder, M surveyed the great soul. Master to M, "What makes you come back?" M, "Perhaps the house you asked me to go to belongs to a rich man. They may not let me in. I think I'd better not go. I would rather meet you here." Master, "Oh no, why should you think that? Just mention my name. Say that you want to see me, then someone will take you to me." M nodded his assent, and after saluting the master, took his leave. And that's the end of chapter 1. Does anyone have any comments about the beginning of the gospel again and M's first meeting? Any questions? We can start chapter 2. We have a little time left. It's in the company of devotees. Now this is March 11th, 1882. About 8 o'clock in the morning, Sri Ramakrishna went as planned to Balaram Bose's house in Calcutta. It was the day of the Dol Yatra. Ram, Manamohan, Rakal, Nitya Gopal, and other devotees were with him. M too came as bidden by the master. The devotees and the master sang and danced in a state of divine fervor. Several of them were in an ecstatic mood. Nitya Gopal's chest glowed with the upsurge of emotion. Rakal lay on the floor in ecstasy, completely unconscious of the world. The master put his hand on Rakal's chest and said, "Peace, be quiet." This was Rakal's first experience of ecstasy. He lived with his father in Calcutta, and now and then visited the master at Dakshineshwar. About this time, he had studied a short while in Vidyasagar school in Shampur. When the music was over, the devotees sat down for their meal. Balaram stood there humbly, like a servant. Nobody would have taken him for the master of the house. M was still a stranger to the devotees, having met only Narendra at Dakshineshwar. And maybe we will stop there because we start another section on... No, we can go. A few days later, M visited the master at Dakshineshwar. It was between 4 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The master and he were sitting on the steps of the Shiva temples, looking at the temple of Radhakanta across the courtyard. The master went into an ecstatic mood. Since his nephew Hridoy's dismissal from the temple, Sri Ramakrishna had been living without an attendant. On account of his frequent spiritual moods, he could hardly take care of himself. The lack of an attendant caused him great inconvenience. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to Kali, the Divine Mother of the Universe. He said, "Mother, everyone says my watch alone is right. The Christians, the Brahmos, the Hindus, the Muslims all say, my religion alone is true. But, Mother, the fact is that nobody's watch is right. Who can truly understand thee? But if a man prays to thee with a yearning heart, he can reach thee through thy grace by any path. Mother, show me sometime how the Christians pray to thee in their churches. But, Mother, what will people say if I go in? Suppose they make a fuss. Suppose they don't allow me to enter the Kali temple again. Well then, show me the Christian worship from the door of the church." Another day, the master was seated on the small couch in his room, with his usual beaming countenance. M arrived with Kali Krishna, who did not know where his friend M was taking him. He had only been told, "If you want to see a grog shop, then come with me. You will see a huge jar of wine there." M related this to Sri Ramakrishna, who laughed about it. The master said, "The bliss of worship and communion with God is the true wine, the wine of ecstatic love. The goal of human life is to love God. Bhakti is the one essential thing. To know God through jnana and reasoning is extremely difficult." Then the master sang, "Who is there that can understand what Mother Kali is? Even the six darshanas are powerless to reveal her." The master said again, "The one goal of life is to cultivate love for God, the love that the milkmaids, the milkmen, and the cowherd boys of Vrindavan felt for Krishna. When Krishna went away to Mathura, the cowherds roamed about weeping bitterly because of their separation from him. Saying this, the master sang, and his eyes turned upward. Just now I saw a youthful cowherd with a young calf in his arms. There he stood, by one hand holding the branch of a young tree. Where are you, Brother Kanai? He cried. But Kanai scarcely could he utter. Ka was as much as he could say. He cried, Where are you, brother? And his eyes were filled with tears. When Im heard this song of the Master's, laden with love, his eyes were moist with tears. And we'll stop there. That's the end of that day. Tomorrow, Swami Arupeshananda will be giving the lecture at 11 o'clock, and it's Why Yoga, Part 1. And next Wednesday, we'll have the reading of For Seekers of God at 5 o'clock in the temple. Any comments or questions? Yeah? You have to speak up really high because I can't hear. Durga, you did ask me that, didn't you? I don't know. I'll look it up and tell you. I don't know. Just 1 second. Here, just 1 second. I will look in the glossary. I shouldn't admit that I don't know it. The six systems of orthodox Hindu philosophy, namely the Sankhya, the Yoga, the Vashishka, the Nyaya, and the Purvamahamsa, and the Vedanta. Okay? That's the six darshanas, the six systems of philosophy. Thank you. Now I know, too. Okay, we'll end with a chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.